Riding a motorcycle isn't just about what you ride, how you look, or your destination. It's about freedom and adventure. Once you start, it becomes a part of who you are. It gets in your blood. But a word of caution. If you dilute your blood with alcohol and get on your bike, well, you've lost it. Because that's not riding. That's just being stupid. Alcohol slows your reflexes and coordination. And please notice these things. So remember why you ride. Because if you don't ride sober, you will get pulled over.
In 1995, John Suk founded Deep Elm Records. Today, 20 years later, Deep Elm Records boasts over 220 releases. We celebrate the pioneering spirit and the awesome artists that make up Deep Elm Records each week here on the unofficial Deep Elm Podcast. The unofficial Deep Elm Podcast begins now. Good evening, everyone. This is Alan Wayne welcoming you to a new episode of the unofficial Deep Elm Podcast. Of course, you can hear this podcast on Spreaker Live. It's being recorded live the evening of January 9th, 2016. Or you can hear this on demand on iTunes. Just look up the unofficial Deep Elm Podcast. Also available on SoundCloud for you SoundClouders out there. Go and check it out. And, of course, the archive is available on Spreaker.com. Glad to be here tonight and very excited to be profiling this band called Track a Tiger. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I became involved with Track a Tiger and how I came to like them and how I came to want to do one of my first unofficial Deep Elm podcasts on them. It all started with a package. It all started with a package that John sent me many, many months ago that had various promotional materials, t-shirts and whatnot, and it also had CDs. And a couple of the CDs that I had received were by this band called Track a Tiger. I popped them in, and they became regular listening for me on my drives. Anywhere I was going, anything I was doing, I was listening to Track a Tiger. I became addicted to their harmonies, to their melodies, to the way that they put together music, awesome music, and you can get their first 3 releases on the Deep Elm label. That's right. The first 3 releases on the Deep Elm label are available at www.deepelm.com. You can name your price on anything on the site, as you are probably well aware. Now, the great thing about Track a Tiger is that, like a lot of Deep Elm music, it seems to be ahead of its time. We hear a lot of melodies and music nowadays that is ethereal, different harmonies and things of that nature. Well, Track a Tiger was doing these types of modern sounds a few years back. Track a Tiger started in 2003 as a solo project of Jim Vallets. And by the way, I would like to say a special thank you to Jim Vallets for sending me a beautiful media package full of all of Track a Tiger's albums, as well as CDs, and a poster that is currently hanging as the first poster in my studio. So thank you to Jim Vallets. As I said before, the band started in 2003 as a solo project of Jim Vallets, but has always been a collaborative of many different artists. Right now, the lineup consists of 4 members. Let me go ahead and get that information for you. While we're talking about this, of course, you can pick up Track a Tiger on Deep Elm Records. While I look this up here, www.deepelm.com. Name your price on anything. Jim Vallets is on vocals and guitar. Kate Steinberg is on keyboards and vocals, Adam Smith, guitar. Josh Tyack on bass. And Mike Roth on drums. That is the lineup listed on deepelm.com. We're going to get into some of the material that Track a Tiger released on the Deep Elm label, and we're going to start with their debut, of course, called Woke Up Early the Day I Died. That's a very happy sentiment, but I'm sure everybody think about that statement, woke up early the day I died, kind of sounds like the beginning of a film noir type of movie. It just seems like somebody from a movie like this would say would say in the opening narrative, I woke up early the day I died, and it gets you thinking. On the site, The first words written about Track a Tiger. Track a Tiger's debut full-length Woke Up Early the Day I Died, released in 2006, was re-released on Deep Elm, actually. Their latest, and then it goes into their latest album titled I Felt the Bullet Hit My Heart, which we'll be hearing tracks from in a little while. But it goes on. The sound, moody. Lots of male-female harmonies, a little rock, but mostly slow, sad, sleepy late nights. Think Richard and Linda Thompson and the Sea and Cake having drinks in the living room while Low and Sonic Youth make dinner in the kitchen. I love these creative descriptions. I mean, Deep Elm Records has some of the best descriptions of their artists and their music. It's like perfect. And when you sit and listen, you're like, oh yeah, that's right. While Fleetwood Mac is out getting more ice. Is how the sentence ends. Recorded over the course of 3 years, slowly built upon original guitar and voice tracks that songwriter Jim Vallette recorded in his Chicago apartment's living room, listen close, for a cat, squeaky wood floors, and occasional late-night drunken lovers quarrel on the street below. Woke Up Early the Day I Died has the feel of a much overdubbed indie recording to suit the somewhat depressive vibe of Vallets' lyrics and his low-key melodies. The album compares favorably to contemporaries ranging from Low through Architecture in Helsinki to Broken Social Scene. A particular highlight is the propulsive Happy, which has a jangled-edged, nervous tension akin to the New Zealand indie bands of the 80s. This album was really well received when it was first released on Deep Elm. A couple of the reviews. This one from Ear Farm. Quote, there's a good reason that Track a Tiger is getting lots of love in the music world. Theirs is a mature music. No, not music for old people, but well-aged music, like a fine wine, a 97 Brunello of the indie music world. Music that must have gestated for a while before finally being recorded and sent out for the public to enjoy. Music that resides somewhere in the musical intersection of Low. There's Low again. And Belle and Sebastian. Music that I really am enjoying right now. Music that makes me start every sentence with the word music. Music is as music does. Music, music, music. Thank heavens for music like this. And Big Takeover has a very short review. Introspective, meditative, quiet, gentle pop rock that's really vivid and moving. Well, why don't we listen to some of this amazing material here? And we are going to start with the track Happy that was mentioned here. And this is from the album Woke Up Early the Day I Died. And this is Track a Tiger, tonight's featured artist on the unofficial Deep Elm podcast. You are listening to the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and recorded live every Saturday night, only on Spreaker.com.
Tonight
That was Happy by Track a Tiger off of their first album, Woke Up Early the Day I Died. A couple more reviews here. This is from a publication called Cable and Tweed. Quote, Track a Tiger's mastermind of sorts is Jim Vallette, formerly of Head Candy, its primary songwriter and vocalist. If I had to categorize the band, I suppose I'd label it a sort of experimental folk pop rock act along the lines of older Sufjan or Haypenny. The upbeat cadence of Glad to Be Scattered is right up my alley, although Sea Shaken Heart strikes me as a better song in terms of songwriting and musicianship. The slower Sound as Ever sounds like it could have been an outtake from last year's In the Rains, unquote. Now, this is all kind of inside stuff. Hopefully somebody understands it here, but we're going to play those two of those tracks that were mentioned there. We're going to play Glad to Be Scattered back to back with Sea Shaken Heart off of the debut, the first album Track a Tiger released on Deep Elm Records, entitled Woke Up Early the Day I Died. This is the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, and for those of you wondering, the reason it's unofficial is because in no way, even though Deep Elm Records knows that I am doing this podcast, they in no way sponsor or are partners. Basically, this is a podcast to expose their wonderful story and their talent to the world. So with that cleared up, let's get to some more music by Track a Tiger here on the unofficial Deep Elm Podcast. You are listening to the unofficial Deep Elm Podcast, available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and recorded live every Saturday night, only on Spreaker.com. You are listening to the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and recorded live every Saturday night, only on Spreaker.com. In 1995, John Suk founded Deep Elm Records. Today, 20 years later, Deep Elm Records boasts over 220 releases. We celebrate the pioneering spirit and the awesome artists that make up Deep Elm Records each week here on the unofficial Deep Elm Podcast. The official Deep Elm Podcast begins now. Well, actually, it doesn't begin now. That was an audio trick there. It began about 20 minutes ago. I apologize for that. This is Alan Wayne once again here with you. I have some people in the chat. Welcome. Glad you're here and glad that you're listening to this show this evening based on the band called Track a Tiger and their Deep Elm releases. Now, their next release on the Deep Elm label was called We Moved Like Ghosts. We Moved Like Ghost. And equally meditative as it is memorable, Track a Tiger coaxes only the most atmospheric textures on their aptly titled sophomore full-length We Moved Like Ghosts. This was released in 2007. Taking cues from the drowsy, sweet spirits referenced in the title, there's a touch of intrigue and mystery contained in this infectious collection of sublime indie pop. The real secret of this record is not how these sweeping, organic gems lull you under. but how cozy you feel once the jangly strum of acoustic guitar and gentle keyboards wash over. Jim Vallette and Christina Castaneda's, Christina Castaneda was a vocalist on this record, warm vocals are the final knockout punch, wistful and reflective, yet irresistibly magnetic. We Moved Like Ghosts is mostly a pensive and restrained affair, but don't mistake Track a Tiger for being anything less than dynamically persuasive. The band's charming swing and rollicking backbeat propel songs in a delicate upward trajectory, keeping the mood one step ahead of somber. Of course, Track a Tiger also has an upbeat swagger, at times cranking out rustic melodies that gallop over dusty passages, referencing a more Americana/alt-country canon. A couple of the reviews of this album, quote, this is from Magnet, a publication called Magnet, quote, Track a Tiger lures you in with its low-like vocals, then lulls you with an iron and whiny twang. Interesting. And Verbicide writes, quote, We Move Like Ghosts takes the best elements of Yo La Tengo and pre-melancholy Smashing Pumpkins boy-girl vocals and washed-out hazy guitars and leaves behind the chaff. This album won't rock your socks off, nor does it aim to, but in a world of self-imitation and tedious pretension, Track a Tiger have made an album of highly polished melodic pop gems that truly outshines their contemporaries. Very high praise, once again, for this album. We're going to hear two tracks here from this album, We Moved Like Ghosts. There I go again. I can't say the word ghosts. Ghosts. There we go. First track is called Sometimes Love Runs Out, and the second track is entitled Not Far From This Anger. Remember, folks, you can get these tracks and all of the first 3 releases from Track a Tiger, as well as their sampler work and their track from Floating, the Nathan Goke story, which is a movie that Deep Elm provided the soundtrack for. You can get all of this material at www.deepelm.com, and you can name your price on all of it. So Sometimes Love Runs Out, followed by Not Far From This Anger. Buy a track, buy a whole album from the group Track a Tiger, here on the unofficial Deep Elm podcast. Thank you for listening, whether it's live or whether it's on demand. I love you all. You are listening to the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and recorded live every Saturday night, only on Spreaker.com. You are listening to the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and recorded live every Saturday night, only on Spreaker.com.
You and I can't make a go of things any longer.
And this is the man that I've loved for 20 years.
This is the man who's loved you.
Do you think you'll ever get me out of your blood?
Maybe not, but love has got to stop someplace short of suicide.
Those were two tracks from the sophomore recording from Track a Tiger on Deep Elm Records, and that one was called We Moved Like Ghosts. There we go, Ghosts. All right, that sounds good. Up next, we're going to listen to some of the third album that Track a Tiger put out on the Deep Elm label, and this was called I Felt the Bullet Hit My Heart. This was released in 2009 and is, of course, available, I don't need to tell you, but I will anyway, www.deepelm.com. Name your price on all of the wonderful music on that site. Once again, before I forget, I'd like to thank John from Deep Elm. I would like to thank Track a Tiger. I'd like to thank Jim for sending me a wonderful media package, including everything that Track a Tiger has done, as well as a beautiful poster of their album We Moved Like Ghosts, of the cover art. So I have that poster up in my brand new refurbished studio. I almost created a word there. Brandly newly. So All right, well, let's talk about I Felt the Bullet Hit My Heart, released in 2009. Dynamically spirited and sonically vibrant doesn't always mean loud guitars, especially if you're the atmospheric indie pop and electro-textured slowcore outfit known as Track a Tiger. Fresh off the heels of their critically acclaimed We Moved Like Ghosts, this band isn't resting on the laurels of their Deep Elm Records debut One Bit. Deeply engaging and undeniably subtle, with crushing boy-girl harmonies, sparkling keyboard effects, and a wall of twinkling electronic sound, Track a Tiger is back with the fantastically named I Felt the Bullet Hit My Heart. Cool to the touch, the aptly named album saunters through 12 tracks of soul-numbing sweetness, with Sandy Kim's falsetto in Don't Let the Nightlight Dance downright charming. Dreamy indie pop for you and yours? Bingo. The band keeps picking up comparisons to megastars in the indie rock world, such as Yo La Tengo, Low. Somebody mentioned Yo La Tengo earlier. American Analog Set, and Iron and Wine, because there is a genuine experimental quality to their highly creative, polished lo-fi sound. The band's clever songwriting, ingenious arrangements, and intricate instrumentation are not only pleasing to the ear, but also the psyche. Good description there for this album entitled I Felt the Bullet Hit My Heart. Now, for those of you on the Spreaker end of this, I'd like to let you know that there is going to be a brand new Alan Wayne show tonight where you will hear not only new Track a Tiger, but also some brand new releases from Deep Elm Records, actually one brand new release in particular. And there's going to also be quite a bit of indie rock playing tonight, some from the past, some of my old standards, and of course some brand new stuff that has been sent over for the Alan Wayne show. I'll also be doing some talk segments, but a lot of it is going to be of the old indie jukebox format. I just feel like spinning some tunes tonight. But speaking of spinning tunes, we're going to get to this a couple tracks here from I Felt the Bullet Hit My Heart. The first track is called Don't Let the Nightlight Dance, and the second track is called Love Finds a Way to Torture Me. Now, the reason I chose both of these tracks is, one, they're my favorites on the album, but two, they are actually accompanied with YouTube videos. So go ahead to youtube.com, type in Track a Tiger, and you will find these the video representations of these two songs. Very, very nicely done videos available on YouTube. And of course, you can get all of the material from Track a Tiger's first three albums at deepelm.com. So without further ado, we're going to play Don't Let the Nightlight Dance, and then I'll come back and give you a couple more of the reviews of Track a Tiger's third album entitled I Felt the Bullet Hit My Heart. Don't go anywhere. You are listening to the unofficial Deep Elm podcast, available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and recorded live every Saturday night, only on Spreaker.com. Before we continue with some of the glittering reviews of this third release on the Deep Elm label from Track a Tiger, I would like to make a few corrections. First of all, Track a Tiger, the lineup that I had spoken of previously was a lineup that was utilized, but Track a Tiger has gone through many different lineups with many different people. As mentioned on their Bandcamp page, it is truly a collaborative effort. So they have various different female vocalists giving them a different sound practically every time, and it's just it's just a collaborative, similar to Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros. There's like so many different members of the band, but the main driving person behind Track a Tiger is Jim Vallets, and I would like to say thank you again for the package. Appreciated the package of media you sent me. I've played the vinyl and played the CDs, and awesome. Thank you. Track a Tiger has a very good relationship with Deep Elm, even though they continue to release music independently nowadays. Track a Tiger is currently on Bandcamp, and their latest album was released just this past year, 2015, and it was called Avenue of the Giants. You can see it on bandcamp.com, and it's a really good album. They also have other albums called A Southern Blue, and a couple more albums you can find on bandcamp.com. Just type in Track a Tiger, just as it sounds, .bandcamp.com, and you will find their material. So go check them out. They do have a good relationship with Deep Elm. They chose to release the 3 albums there. And that's one unique aspect about Deep Elm Records, is that if you are an artist, you are not locked into some kind of deal. You can do whatever you want and still be released on Deep Elm Records. I'm sure as long as you're not bad-mouthing the label or anything like that. But you can be released on Deep Elm Records on an album-by-album basis. There's no pressure to stick around. There's no pressure to do anything you don't want to do. Bands go to Deep Elm because they want to be a part of this iconic label that has spanned now 3 decades. So go to the website, www.deepelm.com, check out all those artists, and just know that those artists wanted to be a part of Deep Elm. Deep Elm only takes submissions. They don't go out, looking for bands, and they don't force bands to be cornered in some kind of contract. It is an album by album basis, and I would say if you have a band, submit your material. Submit your material to John, and if you go to the website, www.deepelm.com, you will be able to submit your material to Deep Elm Records. It may be the best decision you've ever made. So we're going to close this out. A couple of the comments from the chat room here on Spreaker.com, a unique feature of Spreaker.com that separates them from any other podcasting site aside from maybe Blog Talk Radio or something like that. They have a comments section or a real live chat room that you can take a look at during the show. I don't recommend it, but I do look at the chat room on occasion during the show and have been known to respond to it. So a lot of comparisons to Four Non Blondes and Pavement, among other bands. And one guy mentioned the hipster term when we were playing some material from their second album. Funny thing, as I said before, Deep Elm seems to always be ahead of the curve, and to make a comment about hipsterism about music from 2007 just goes to show how transcendent, considering there's a hipster plague nowadays, just goes to show how transcendent Deep Elm is. This material is 8 years old. This material is 8 years old, and yet it's receiving modern connotations. So, and you'll find that out on the Alan Wayne Show. I'm going to play some other material from Track a Tiger that they've released independently, and you will see that the material is well ahead of its time. It's material that was recorded years ago and sounds like it could be on the radio today as new and and relevant alternative rock. So, I mean, that is just a testament to not only Track a Tiger, but to Deep Elm Records as well, finding these trend-setting bands. So if you want to be ahead of the trends, if you don't want to be trendy, but you want to be ahead of the trends, check out Deep Elm Records and check out some of the new stuff they have out right now from bands like Inward Oceans and a band called Sons of London, which I will be world premiering tonight on my Alan Wayne Show Indie Jukebox Edition. We're going to close this out with a track called Love Finds a Way to Torture Me. The video is available on YouTube, and the song is available at www.deepelm.com, where you can name your price on the entire album. Buy a track, buy an album. It is up to you. So for all of us here at the Unofficial Deep Elm Podcast, being me, this is Alan Wayne. Thank you for listening, and make sure to listen on the replay on iTunes, SoundCloud, wherever you can listen to this, and of course on Spreaker.com. For you on the Spreaker side, I'm going to take a quick break, and then I'll be back with a new Alan Wayne show in a little while, probably about half an hour, 45 minutes. So once again, thank you for listening. Have a great evening, and thank you, John. And I'm going to start rambling here pretty soon, so I'll just end this podcast. Good night. You are listening to the Unofficial Deep Elm Podcast, available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and recorded live every Saturday night, only on Spreaker.com. You are listening to the Unofficial Deep Elm Podcast, available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and recorded live every Saturday night, only on Spreaker.com.
Look out in the street there. You know what you don't see? My car, because I had to sell it to pay the lawyer I hired when I got busted for drunk driving. Know what else you don't see? My girlfriend, who decided that a guy with no car and no license and no money was no fun. And hey, you know what else you don't see? You don't see me leaving for work in the morning, because I missed so much time with court and everything that I got fired.
Drive sober or get pulled over. Paid for by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.